Hey there, marketing analytics students. In this video, we're going to learn how to import and prepare our data for analysis when we're using RapidMiner. First, we're going to read our training data into RapidMiner. The file is in a CSV format. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Once we successfully read this file in, we're also going to need to set each one of our variables in such a way that RapidMiner can understand it in a way that's useful for later analysis. This means we're going to have to set some metadata information about it. Keep in mind, there's a lot of different ways to import data and prepare it using RapidMiner. We're just going to be looking at one. Let's take a closer look at the data file that we're going to be importing. This is a comma-separated values file format, or a CSV. It's pretty typical. I'm looking at it in Notepad right now, but you could have easily opened it in Notepad Reader in a Mac or Excel. Notice how the first row has variable names, all 6 of them. Notice how all the subsequent rows represent all of the records. So we have 400 additional records here. And then notice that there's commas separating the columns here. Not all comma-separated value files actually are separated by commas, but it's typical. Finally, a few other things that we should keep in mind and be a little thankful for. Notice that we're not dealing with any complex strings of information like a lengthy Yelp review or Twitter tweets, for example. That's going to make importing this a bit easier. Finally, even just glancing at this little screenshot here, it doesn't look like we have any missing data issues that we're going to have to deal with. We would have noticed that because we would have seen any spot where there was a comma next to immediately another comma, meaning there was no data in between. This is going to bring us to our very first RapidMiner operator that we'll be using, the READ CSV operator. What you're going to do is you're going to go to your operator menu here on the bottom left-hand side. You're going to search READ CSV. You'll find the operator and drag it onto the interface. And then take the connecting wire here and drag it to our RES or results on the right-hand side. Okay, so we go for READ CSV, find that operator, drag it onto the pane. Now, if I try to run this, it doesn't work because I don't actually have all the necessary information. Let's go fix that. In my case, I have a little folder that I created right on my desktop. With my training data saved right there. When you click the CSV operator, the parameters menu will ask for a series of different prompts related to it. We're going to have to spend some careful time thinking about setting those just right. First, you're going to need to navigate to wherever you stored these particular CSV files on your actual machine. I can't tell you where those are. Those are wherever you saved them. Next, this is a little tricky. It turns out that not all comma-separated values files are actually separated by commas. Sometimes they're separated by semicolons, tabs, or something else. So here, we make sure that we note that actually it is indeed a comma that separates our values. In addition, we want to note that our data actually starts on the very first row, which is typical. All these other basic settings we can ignore for now. We also want to note that our first row actually has the names of our variables. That's important. And then here's the big one. This little icon here is where we're going to set important information about each one of these variables so that RapidMiner will process and understand it in the proper way when we conduct analysis later. Next, for my column separators, semicolon is wrong. Change that to a comma. Now I can set my metadata. This is our completed dataset metadata information. First, notice that we have 6 columns of information, but RapidMiner starts at 0, so we start at 0 to 5. Next, also notice that we could have technically given each one of our variables an entirely new name here. I typed these in by hand, but I wanted to make sure they matched the same exact thing that we had in the original CSV file. By checking these boxes, we're telling RapidMiner to import every single one of these columns. Now this is where things get very important, and it's very particular to RapidMiner. Take a look at this blue box here. This is where we set the type of data that we're dealing with. And this is important because RapidMiner often really cares about whether the data you're dealing with is categorical or numerical, or what type of categorical or numerical information it is. First, there's 3 types of categorical data that we usually deal with in RapidMiner. First, nominal. That's when it's a categorical variable that could have 2 or more groups. Then there's also a binomial categorical data. That's when there's exactly 2 groups. And finally, there's polynomial. Polynomial is when it's categorical data that has 2 or more groups. The designation between these 3 is rather tricky. In many cases, calling a particular categorical variable simply nominal is plenty good enough. Finally, we also deal with numerical data. There's 2 types that we primarily deal with. Real values, so these are positive and negative values with fractional values in between. Pi would also be a real number. Integers are simply positive or negative whole numbers without any decimals. In our case, we set both of these as real values. Let's take a look at this red box. This is an important property that we're setting in RapidMiner. This is how we train RapidMiner to treat each one of these columns. First, an ID indicator simply tells RapidMiner that this particular column is neither used for prediction or as an outcome. Instead, it's just a way of identifying a particular record. The label here is very important, and it's a bit of a strange piece of nomenclature for us. In our world, instead of calling something a label, we would tend to think of this as our outcome, our dependent variable, or the thing that we're trying to predict. Finally, this attribute designation is our way of understanding a predictor, input, or independent variable, but RapidMiner likes to call it attribute. There's additional ways that we can set data in RapidMiner, but these 3 will suffice for this tutorial. Once you set all the metadata information correctly for the file, go ahead and click that blue triangle and run your process. Now we're in the results menu, and the only thing we didn't really conduct any analysis. We simply actually just processed that file and brought it into RapidMiner. If you look at the data, you can clearly see that we've successfully read in the entire CSV file. It'll scroll down for all 400 records. And also notice this coloration for the customer and the subscribed. The customer is blue because that's RapidMiner's way of indicating to you that this is indeed stored as an ID attribute. And the green designation here means that we've stored this successfully as a label, meaning it's an outcome that we may want to try to predict on. If we click on the statistics icon, we can actually explore the characteristics of each one of these variables rather easily. Take a look at segment number. Remember, we stored it as a polynomial, meaning it can be multiple categories. Since it's being treated as multi-categorical, RapidMiner helpfully presents this information in a summary format that ranks them from most to least. So remember, this 2 isn't really a number 2. Since we called it a polynomial, we're treating it like it's categorical data. And that makes sense because each one of these 4 numbers really just belongs to one of our customer segments. And also we get the individual count values here for each one of these variables. Now, platform usage, on the other hand, was stored as a real value, a real true numerical value. So here, we have the summary simply sorted from 0 to 100 because now the order of the numerical values matters. We have the min, we have the max, and of course, because this is a real value, reporting the average and the standard deviation actually makes sense.